I'm Second Rainbow Coalition. I was also co-founder of the first Rainbow Coalition back in the 60s. And I'm also co-founder of the Young Patriot Organization, which was a revolutionary organization that made up mostly of Southern people in Chicago. And we are on a book tour, Kwame Shakur and I, and we're actually promoting our books. But also, this is a unity tour to try to bring people and organizations together. So we also have a documentary, which is going to be on the first Rainbow Coalition. And we'll show you that, and then we'll go into the second Rainbow Coalition. But first, I want to introduce you to the incoming chairperson of the second Rainbow Coalition. And that's Lisa Ray, and she's going to read our statement of unity that everyone has to, any organization that comes in has to adhere to it. And it's sort of a point program that we used to do back in the day of the Rainbow Coalition with Fred Hampton and all. So, welcome. And
you can sit up here. Oh, what's up, Rob? How's it going? Sorry, you're good. We just started.
Remember that?
Sorry. Alright, so the preface is the U.S. was founded as a colonial federal state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to reservations or concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. In the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good, meaningful life: food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Now, the statement of unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition is: the legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capital imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of a class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle. He said, "It's a class struggle, goddammit." By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class of condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organizations, and all other Rainbow Coalition members, we established our programmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win, all power to the people, boots on the ground. Squad to the boots.
All power to the people.
All power to the people. Also, if you see the people outside, this is the John Brown Gun Club. We do have security everywhere we go. The white supremacists don't like us very well. We were in Portland and really had to use it because we had shooting over there. And so everywhere we go, so don't, they're just out there making sure that everybody's safe. Okay? And so with that, we can get started on the first Rainbow Coalition. This is how it all started back in the 60s in Chicago.
Oh, yeah, you're on. Who's that guy? Want the light?
It's kind of difficult for me to get up after this movie sometime and talk. I've lost so many friends, during that period of time. And it was all because of fascism. It was because of Mayor Daley and COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover, classified us as a threat to national security. We were kids. When this was made, I was 19 years old. Brad Hampton, when he was killed, I think was 20, 21 years old. Seen some other people in there that we'll never see again because they were killed. And all three of the organizations that were the ones that started this coalition. But we started the coalition because, and I'll fill in a little bit of the movie here that you didn't see. The community that I was in had a unemployment rate of 48%. There were more people in this community out of a job than there were jobs in Chicago. We were treated as insignificant trash, by the city and by the government. So we had no other place to go except, to try to fight the machine and try to change things. Each of us in these organizations are doing it in our different communities simultaneously, to try to make our communities self-determined. And that doesn't go very well with power structure. They wanted to control literally everything. The Democratic machine controlled everything. So we had a lot of starvation. Literally, we had people that were dying of black lung disease, emphysema, diabetes, lead poisoning. We had one of the highest infant mortality rates in the country. Literally, the cops were just beating on everybody that they could because this is how Mayor Daley and the machine kept people in control. He came from a gang called the Hamburgs, but they called themselves an athletics association. But they were very quick to defend themselves from keeping, undesirables out of the community. At the same time, if a politician needed something, then he would, they would be quick to help them, or be quick to fight. So this sort of propelled him up to, after he got his law degree, first sheriff, and then, to mayor. He became one of the most powerful mayors in the country, and just used his police department as his own gang. And it was okay with him if they if they beat people, if they raped women, if they even had their own burglars. They would find somebody that's committed a crime and have them to be their burglar, or they would, take them to jail. So it was not uncommon for any of us to be beaten. My first 2 weeks in Chicago was cops pulled me up, got me in the back of the squad car, and they asked me for my ID. I didn't have an ID, and they said, "Well, you want to buy one?" And then they said, "Let me see your ID." Or I said, "I have a Social Security card. I'm only 17 years old." And they took that and they said, "Oh no, not another fucking hillbilly. Why don't you people go back down south and fuck your mother, your dog, or your pig, or whoever the people fuck. And that's the way we were treated. We were treated that way by the cops. They had they actually had an apartment in the community, out just a little bit outside the community, where they would take women um, if they had some kind of a charge on them, or if they had some kind of a charge on their kids. They'd try to work it out in sexual favor, which was also controlled by one of the Democratic precinct captains. And I'm saying all this to fill in why, we would object to, Mayor Daley, and we had no other place to go. Most of us came from down south. We had to leave because of, no jobs, mechanization of the farms, being taken over by big conglomerates, or the mines, shutting down, and so we had no other place to go. There's a migrant circle that went from Chicago to up around, Detroit, back to Cincinnati, back down into where were you from? Most people couldn't find jobs, so we fought, and we knew that one of the ways that Mayor Daley um, destroyed communities because of urban renewal. He wanted, as he said, there's no slums, but he wanted to gentrify all these communities because most of the people had a lot of his people had moved out to the suburban area, so he wanted to bring them back. So one of the tools that he used was he would put some kind of an institution within the community to gentrify it, and he'd pick a part of the community that was the poorest. And so we were no different. He proposed a community college, and so we started fighting him on that. And we offered an alternative, actually. So those came up. A lot of people came up with what was called the People's Village, that would control its own destiny, have its own school, it would have its own, uh, health services, employment services, and it would be run by the people in the community. The cops would have to come from that community. And so, and we also proposed a hotel that new people coming in could go to this hotel temporarily. We would try to find them jobs or whatever. And the city had said, if you find funding, we'll take a look at it. And we did find funding. We raised over $475,000, and that's a lot of money back then.
Yeah. That's a lot of money today.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And then we got we had lawyers, we had real estate companies, we had banks, financial institutions behind us that said, this will work, let's do it. And they still turned it down to get this college in there. Before they got this college in there, there was also arson for hire. Um, the chancellor of the city colleges actually had 3 friends of his that came in and would buy up these buildings, and then they would torch them, and then they would sell them, get the insurance and sell them back to the city. But the only problem is 28 people killed in these fires, and no one was ever, sent to prison. We know it's true because some people that set it on fire, like some winos, tell us about it at the same time. There were some firemen caught setting fires, and these were city employees. And 2020, the TV magazine did an expose and actually proved that these people uh, were responsible for setting these fires. And they turned around and through 2020, and they had to renege on it. So nothing was ever done there either. And then, Fred Hampton, the FBI and Chicago police were found guilty of conspiring to murder Fred Hampton. in 2 different civil courts. Nobody ever went to jail. They had to pay a huge fine. They wouldn't take them into criminal court. So this was the mentality of the city government at that time. And I say this because I want to let you know why we stood up and fought. When Hampton was killed, I was 19 years old. When I started in this movement, I was 17 years old. And the oldest one in our organization was 22 years old. We were young kids. It said, what else are we going to do? They kept taking us to jail, kept picking us up, trumped up charges. We said, you can't do much more but kill us, and which they did do too. Some of our members were killed, younger members. And in this movie, you remember the old man that stood up, old man, he's probably my age, but stood up and said, we should take these landlords and throw them all in the lake. They cut his throat. His throat was cut. We had another member that was with us in Rising Up Angry who was he was shot execution style. People were beaten all the time. I had cops come to my door, banging on my door, and I said, "Who's there?" And the Chicago police, and all of a sudden they had a key to my apartment. They were taking people from our community that, like they didn't get me, thank God, but they got some other of our people, and would take them and drop them off in a black neighborhood with no money, no ID, in hopes that the gangs would get them. Well, people got smart when they started. Then they started putting the people on a train and L train and getting them back home. And we did the same thing when they put somebody in our neighborhood. So we started fighting them that way. But how do you fight something like that? I mean, as Bobby was saying in the movie, they got this, they put your hands here and then they beat the hell out of you. What are you going to do? Fred Hampton and others would sew their pockets shut, because if you get stopped by cops and you did this, well, there's a weapon there and they could shoot you or they could beat the hell out of you. And if you had a nice car in this community, they'd stop you on the stop and frisk, claim they found something, and confiscate your car. Next thing you know, it's sold on auction. It just kept going on and on and on. And after Hampton was killed, it got a little worse, if it could possibly get worse. And so that's why some of us left and went to. I traveled around the South for a long time, underground, still staying involved, as much as I could. And finally, I came back out about 15, 20 years ago, something like that, and decided to go back into the movement. And some things have changed. There's some other people that have been writing books about it that I didn't know about. But then started organizing. I live in Alabama. I'm down there organizing now. But finally, I lived long enough to see the second Rainbow Coalition, which Kwame will talk about. I'm sort of an advisor, just whatever, whatever they want me to do. And it just, I tell you, it just warms my heart to see this happening again. The second Rainbow Coalition. We've been traveling around the country. We did a West Coast tour last year with used books. We've written books here that hint we are selling, because that helps. Yeah, that helps fund our trip. And so we have.
And the next one.
Yeah, and the next one. So we don't intend to stop, because we're gonna do a Midwest tour, one in the South. So we're continuing with that. And so Kwame had gotten in touch with me and said they were doing a second rainbow and a coalition, and that's how basically we started working together. Okay, but anyway, I'll shut up. Yeah, thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you turn that off?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Did you get it? Yeah.
So y'all heard from Hy. Y'all just got a chance to see the first Rainbow Coalition. I'm gonna backtrack and now before I say that, I'm gonna recognize our chairwoman of the second Rainbow Coalition. She's here with us with the young lords, Alyssa Ray. Me and her, the co-chairs of the second Rainbow Coalition together. Soon I'll be handing the torch over to one of the Brown Beret comrades going to be taking over as the chairman. They're doing wonderful work throughout the country, many chapters across the country. They're armed, they're organized. I think they're going to be able to push our movement to another level. And I'm going to keep on doing the type of work I've been doing, and that's growing the coalition, bringing the unity. But I want to take a back step because a lot of people see the finished product of something, and I'm not saying I'm a finished product. We always in the process of development, even to higher levels of organization, education, all that stuff. But I think I wrote this book because I wanted people to know like my struggles to even get to revolutionary consciousness. You know, that wasn't a straight road. It didn't happen overnight. I always use the analogy that we all woke up at different times. Some of us woke up early. Some of us woke up in the afternoon. Some of us woke up just a few minutes ago. You know what I mean? Me.
Yeah, you were sleeping all
I'm
night.
glad that you said it. I wanted to.
But it's different times that we wake up, even when it comes to consciousness, and we have to understand the process to how people wake up. What are the social conditions that starts to impinge on our consciousness that make us like, why is it like this? What is the circle? I want to put a circle around that thing I'm frustrated with, that I feel alienated from. You know what I mean? So I want to talk about some of my younger years before I get to that transition that led to me working with individuals like Hy Thurman and other revolutionaries around the country. So this is my younger years. This is around the time when like 87, 88. This is when my stepfather and my mom married. She divorced my father. But this right here give you a glimpse into how I was seeing the world at the time. It says a lot of stuff changed when my mom remarried. We ended up moving out to the suburbs on the northwest side of Indianapolis. Not too long after that, we began attending Guyan Creek Elementary School. That was a big transition on so many levels for all of us, especially me. I was only 8 years old and really never thought about social classes and how different people live due to their social class. I had grown accustomed to living in the hood. I figured the whole world moved the same way and had paper bag monsters roaming the streets too. I talk about paper bag monsters. It's like an innocent way. Talk about the drunks that lived in our neighborhood. I never knew what they was drinking. I just knew they had a paper bag and they transformed in zombies, whatever they was drinking in that paper bag. So I called them paper bag monsters. You know what I mean? To discover that wasn't the case expanded my world tremendously. Even the kids at my new school were different. At School 42, there was a roughness in the kids that had become normal to me. At Guyan Creek, all the kids seemed a lot more jolly and overly nice. The streets out north didn't have busted liquor glasses scattering up and down the sidewalk. Everything seemed nicer and more polished. What was really apparent too was the ratio between blacks and whites and how much more middle class the black people acted on this side of town. Like I said, I never paid much attention to any class stratification throughout Indianapolis. Even the better looking neighborhoods we passed whenever we rode back and forth to church didn't stand out to me. It was just part of the background that we occasionally got glimpses of. Now that background seemed to finally grasp my five senses and force me to reevaluate the world a lot more closely, and I did. Sometimes we would go stay the weekend at Nana's house, my grandmother, so we could spend time with my father and grandmother. By this time, Mama had died. Our grandfather, Daddy, was still alive and still there, but he was still the same daddy, a man of few words just existing. I enjoyed spending time with my dad and my grandmother. I was still Daddy's boy. However, I had another father as well now, who I was growing closer to. That predicament often placed me and my siblings in a dilemma. My father was very angry and hurt over my mom's divorcing him and getting remarried. He and my grandmother would often talk about it in front of us. They may not have intended to turn us against our stepfather, but because I held my father in such high esteem, I slowly began to. Going back and forth between Nana's house and ours, though, made me reflect all the more deeply as it's related to the differences in neighborhoods and different sides of town. I remember looking out the window now and was going to my father's house for the weekend and really paying attention to the drastic changes in the environment. It was like going from day to night, literally. I recall one time we were headed to our house and we witnessed a guy chasing another guy with a knife. The one who was trying to get away looked like his wrist had been nearly severed and was barely hanging on his arm. The direction he was headed towards had a fence. To this day, I'm not sure if he had escaped his pursuer or not, but I imagine he didn't. Seeing that at a young age made a big impression on me. All hours of the day, you could hear the police sirens roaring up and down the streets. You very seldomly would hear them on the north side. I remember feeling torn between these two worlds the older I got. I took a little bit from both, but as I got older, I began defining my black manhood. As I began to define my black manhood, I took more from the hood than I did the suburbs. That's a little part of living in two worlds. I think a lot of people when don't know like how much of a culture shock it can have on a kid from coming in the world, living in the hood their whole life. You think the whole world is the hood. You know what I mean? Even like I said, when we was going to church back and forth, I really never internalized what I was seeing. It was just like a background. But now to actually live in the suburbs and having these two worlds juxtaposed to myself, where I go see my grandmother and my father on weekends sometimes, and then live in the suburban neighborhood, it was like I started to realize it was differences in the world. You know what I mean? And how do we internalize these differences? And at that time of my life, like I said, I took a little bit from both, but I took more from the hood. High school, I'm gonna fast forward to high school, read this little part as I go a little deeper into this. It's about 2 pages long. It says in the summer of '93, I entered Pike High School as a freshman. I had anticipated the moment the whole previous year. In a lot of ways, the year before had begun shaping the person I was becoming, though. The year before, I pointed my first pistol at a dude while making him fear for his life. I wanted people to fear, or both fear and love me. My ambition to create a reputation in the streets was just emerging. On the flip side of the coin, I still had my hoop dreams. I wanted to one day play for Michigan Wolverines and then go on to play for the NBA. I wanted to be a basketball star who was loved and respected by my peers and strangers alike. These two ambitions were contradictory and became warring factions within me. Underneath those dissimilar aspirations was fueled by my several social contradictions. By the time I reached high school, my Christian faith formed an integral part of my social being. Although I fully believed it to be true, I wrestled with its application within my life while also increasingly feeling angry that I was forced to endure this cosmic battle between God and the devil. This part of my struggle often caused me to feel suicidal and develop a strong contempt for life. I wrestled with depression often because of this. This was also fueled by a feeling of in betweenness that came from me now living in the suburbs, but not living a suburban life financially. I knew what it felt like to have to go to school wearing the same 5 pair of clothes each week for most of the school year, mixing and matching them to appear like I had more than I really had while witnessing other kids come to school wearing the latest fashionable and trendy clothes and shoes. Ironically, I would often feel compelled to voice this more vocally when I found myself with my peers who stayed in the hood. Because of our zip code, people would assume that we were better off and suburban across the board. They they might have even had better clothes and shoes than being my siblings, but would still make it seem like their life was much harder than ours. In many cases, it might have been, but to a large extent, I knew it was more similar than they tried to make it out to be. This often got under my skin because I knew we were living paycheck to paycheck. That is, my parents. As for us, we were living child support to child support. That is, whenever my mom would give us money, most of the time we were able to buy some ice cream along with our school lunch or something, but nothing to stun about. I remember the times we would break into our parents' room when they weren't home with a butter knife to get to the cereal and extra food they would keep in their bedroom. That was a big contrast to me whenever I would go over to a friend's house who I won't name, who had a food pantry such a wide variety of selection of cereal and snacks that it could damn near be converted into a small convenience store. As ridiculous as it may seem to me now, I remember getting in arguments with kids from the hoods about who had it worse. This would often lead to me getting into arguments with my mom about moving back to the hood so we could have more. I remember times telling my mom, so and so lives in the hood and they got more than us. Why don't we just move back to the hood so we can have more? I would be serious as a heart attack whenever I confronted my mom about the social contradictions between how we were living compared to how I felt people should live if they wanted to live out in the suburbs. I knew my mom just wanted to give us a better environment to grow up in than she had. But I also knew that she didn't know what it was like to be the first generation to move out the hood and experience the feeling of in betweenness from all directions. I wasn't necessarily a suburban kid nor a hood kid. I felt in between those two poles by being the first out the hood. This was a social contradiction in time that made me search for my black manhood from the streets, from a more urban centric perspective of life. Instead of viewing things from a class analysis, the suburbs came to symbolize being white, while the hood symbolized being black and a real nigga. This expressed itself in different forms throughout my high school years. In middle school, I had grown to view white girls in an exaggerated way. For me, I saw landing a pretty white girl as a greater acquisition than copping a pretty black girl. It wasn't something that I could consciously articulate, but my actions demonstrated that by how hard I tried to get a white girl's phone number versus a black girl's. I would have probably never admitted it, but once I moved around more white people, I began seeing white women as more sexually desirable and white people in general as smarter than black people. I would even go so far as to cheat off a white person's test, even though I probably was smarter than most of the white people in my class. As ironic as that may all seem, I realize now how W.E. Du Bois' double consciousness affects black people by simply being born black in America, not only racially, but in relation to class. He says, speaking about this two-ness, that it is a, quote, it is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of the world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One feels this two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two salts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. For me, this is how the dialectical contradiction played out in my social being as I entered high school. The latter I had begun the process of overcoming. Instead of entering high school believing that white girls were more aesthetically beautiful than black women, I swung to the opposite extreme. One of my classmates by the name of Dion Miller had a great influence on me on the year before. He was the first person I met who talked about black pride and black history with admiration. Before him, I don't think I had ever heard the name Frederick Douglass uttered by anyone. He came at me like Ice Cube came to Omar Epps in the movie Higher Learning. Y'all remember that? He really didn't make white people out to be devils or anything. He was more so giving me this dissertation of why we should be proud of to be black. Since I was wrestling with several contradictions surrounding race relations, including how I began to putting white women on an aesthetic pedestal, I came away from that conversation trying to convince myself that black women were the most beautiful women in the world and held on to that view for all 4 years of high school. There was one time I remember even turning down sex with a white girl just because I didn't want to defile myself by being sexually intimate with a white girl. When I look back, when I look back on that sort of way of thinking now, I see that that phase in my life as a necessary start to resolving a contradiction that was once integral to my feelings of self-hate and the inferiority complex which I had developed after moving to the suburbs. It made me understand others who I came across later in life whenever they started wrestling with their own contradictions. I realized things don't resolve themselves in a straight line. Sometimes the pendulum swings to the opposite extreme until one's consciousness is more securely rooted with a healthy world outlook. I think it's important to start from this premise so one can understand the various contradictions that work within me in order to comprehend the broader context of my actions and internal struggles that drove my reckless actions at times. Like many teenagers, I was on a journey to find an identity which was often elusive even to me. That right there, you see, Marx, one of my favorite quotes from Marx. He said, "It is not one's consciousness that determines their social being, but on the contrary, their social being that determines their consciousness." I pretty much was encapsulating that with the different social environments that shape my social being in different ways. The family institution, the religious institution, the schools, the school social institutions. All these have a way of shaping us and socially conditioning us in different ways. It gives us that spectrum of life where we can see our potential or lack thereof. It shapes how we define our relationships to our peers and other ethnic groups and different classes of people within our community. And when you're young, you don't have that class consciousness, and this is why some of us make the mistake and we get caught up in the racial ways of analyzing life. And just like I was younger, uh, and started to look at white women different than black women, and then changed once I came across that one guy that tried to make me feel like, man, we should always be proud of ourselves. Da, da, da. I still looked at it from a racial analysis, and that was my error. You dig what I'm saying? So I want to fast forward now to the point in my life. I went to prison for 18 years. Uh, that those ways of being socially conditioned took me in the direction that I eventually led up in prison. I was a robber. I stuck up people. I carjacked, burglarized. Went to prison for robbing a bank, getting in a shootout with the police. You know what I mean? That was my life. And then went to prison and was giving hell to the police. But I was a rebel without a cause. I was angry at life without a circle to put around what I was angry about. A lot of us deal with this, but we approach and try to fill that void in different ways. Some of us get caught up in drugs. We see that's a major epidemic out here. Even though I would say this is part of the class struggle against us, I think we all recognize that alcohol addiction. It's different ways we get caught up in the life to try to find this validation, which is elusive to a lot of us. But I want to talk about how I started to put a circle around it for the first time and how this chapter really is the time of my life that I didn't even realize was going to take me to be here talking to y'all today. You know what I mean? So at this time, I'm on the lockup unit. Fucked up a police in there. Got sent to lockup. Uh, this is when everything changed. I was 21 years old. I'm gonna talk about that at this time. It was around this time that I started really turning to books. Buddy, which was a friend of mine, initially piqued my interest while we were in general population together. I had caught him coming back from the general library with a few books in his hand. Somewhat amused, I asked him what he was doing with those books. He said he was educating himself. That's when I learned that he was illiterate before he caught his case. While he was in the county jail, he taught himself how to read and write. Once he got to Wabash Valley Correctional Facility where we was at, he continued his self-education by reading books in the general library. I was impressed by him teaching himself how to read and write, but I understand why he felt the need to be reading books about black history and black consciousness. To me, I view that as becoming institutionalized. The way I view life at this juncture was that nobody could tell me anything in a book if they hadn't walked in my shoes literally. All that black consciousness, black power shit I viewed as being subjects I had no interest in learning about. I didn't want to learn about our history because what I figured at the time was that we really didn't have any substantial history. I always viewed our history as starting with slavery and ending with the civil rights movement. At least that's what they implied at all the schools that I attended growing up. This unusual conversation with Buddy ended with him giving me a fictional hood book by Donald Goines. I think the book was Black Gangster. Initially, he tried to give me a Black Consciousness book, but I outright rejected that. I told him, bruh, I'm not on none of that Black Power Nation of Islam shit, period. I wasn't trying to and think about this. This is that movie Malcolm X. And that's how I stereotypically look at people that try to educate themselves. Ah, you must be Nation of Islam, but that's how narrow-minded and myopic I was. You know what I mean? Uh, I wasn't going to be converting to Islam, changing my name, or wearing afros when I got out. I thought all that shit was for the birds. The only thing I was trying to do was survive prison and make it back to the streets one day. That's all. After I read Donald Goines' book, I developed a thirst for hood books. When he brought the when I brought that first book back to Buddy and asked for another one, he offered me another Black Consciousness book to read. And like the first time he offered me one of those genre books, I told him I was good and that wasn't my cup of tea today, tomorrow, or the next century. Instead of being forceful, he relented and gave me another hood book. This time he gave me Pimp by Iceberg Slim. After I read that book, I realized that pimping wasn't cool at all. To this day, I still feel the same. Nevertheless, when I returned that book back to him, he offered me another Black Consciousness book, and I relented. He told me, since I liked all the other books he had given me, why not give this Black Consciousness book he was offering me a chance too? I only took it because he said he wouldn't force any more on me if I didn't like the one he was giving. I figured I would read this one book. One.
It's always one, but
Always one. Then afterwards, he would stop coming at me with all this black pearl nonsense. I looked at the cover of it, Business for Black Men by Naeem Akbar. To my surprise, as I began to read it, I noticed that the author was actually on to something. The premise of the book was to highlight the difference between men and males. Up until this time of my life, I had dismissed the need to read books. I viewed education only as a passport to get in what society said I needed to get a good job and make a better life for myself. I didn't think anyone could understand my plight without living in my shoes literally. Now I was seeing that this brother who had never met me actually understood a lot about me from the words in this book. I saw a lot of myself in the illustrations of how he defined a male. For most of my life, I thought being a quote unquote real nigga meant that you had to get your money up, be able to fight, fuck as many women as you could, and have the respect of the streets and the peers. He was showing me that was what males did. They simply lived out the power of lived their life through the power of their testicles. Being a man or a real nigga, as defined by the streets, placed the immature world outlook over a mature world outlook that gave preference to one's responsibilities, priorities, and accountability to their community above all else. It meant becoming a well-rounded individual that always strived to better themselves over keeping up with the Joneses. What really stood out to me as I read that book is that a lot of the guys in prison seemed to be males, not men. It didn't matter if they were 18 or 80. Some of them should have a male mentality and not a true mentality of a well-grounded man. After reading that book, it made me start to look at books and self-education differently. Carter G. Woodson once wrote in The Miseducation of the Negro, quote, philosophers have long conceded, however, that every man has two educators, that which is given to him and the other that which he gives himself. Of the two kinds, the latter is by far the more desirable. Indeed, all that is most worthy in man he must work out and conquer for himself. It is that which constitutes our real and best nourishment. What we are merely taught seldomly nourishes the mind, like that which we teach ourselves. Unquote. By the time I got to the SHU, which was the Supermax unit I was on, 23-hour lockdown, by the time I got to the SHU, I was eager to start my self education. I wanted to understand why the world was so fucked up and unfair. It seemed like my life was being controlled by an unseen force. I just couldn't put a circle around what that force was. I didn't want to simply blame everything on the devil. I figured he had a hand in it, but I felt there was a tangible, mundane reason as well. I didn't really know where to start, but a friend of mine who was on 1200 range with me helped me in this endeavor. He sent me this Vita Wawa 2 Book 11 journal that had 3 speeches by Fred Hampton. Before then, I didn't know anything about Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. I hadn't even heard his name before and knew really nothing about the original Black Panther Party. I had always assumed they was the black version of the Ku Klux Klan. At least that's what a preacher on TV once referred to them as being. When I read the speech he gave in 1969, titled Power Anywhere There's People, I immediately took a strong liking to Fred Hampton. The fact that he was 21 years old when the government had assassinated him, and I was 21 years old myself at the time, I could relate to him. Even though I was only reading his words was having a powerful effect on me. I had been a rebel without a cause for a long time. When I came across Fred Hampton, it felt as if my cause had introduced itself through his charisma. I never heard anyone speak like him, not even Malcolm X. At the end of his speech, he said, quote, we in the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication and understanding, went into the valley knowing that the people are in the valley, knowing that our plight is the same plight as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemies are on the mountaintop. Two our friends are in the valley, and even though it's nice to be on the mountaintop, we going back to the valley. Because we understand that there's work to be done in the valley. And when we get through with the work that's in the valley, then we got to go to the mountaintop. We going to the mountaintop because there's a motherfucker on the mountaintop that's playing king and he's been bullshitting us. And we got to go to the mountaintop not for the purpose of living his lifestyle and living like he does. We got to go to the mountaintop to make this motherfucker understand, goddamn it, that we coming from the valley. Unquote. I was impressed. I started to learn. I wanted to learn more about this unknown leader no one told me about, as well as the original Black Panther Party he was a part of. I learned in that Vita Wawa 2 journal about the free breakfast programs that the original Black Panther Party had. I learned about the street organizations and how a number of them have worked alongside them. I also discovered that the FBI had pitted other street organizations against the Black Panther Party to disrupt the good work they were doing in the community. I hadn't heard any of those things in the schools that I had attended growing up. I wonder what else they was hiding from me. I was determined from that day forth to study everything I could. I started realizing there was a whole lot that they did tell me about during my formative education in school. Or should I say, miseducation in those schools. Just to sum that up, you see the different transitions in my life where my social environment had different ways of shaping my social being, therefore my social consciousness or limit or spectrum thereof. You know what I mean? Uh, I read this part at all my book stops because I want everybody to understand I'm just like you. I'm not no superhero. I'm not nothing more amazing than the potential that everyone in this building has the same capability of once we start to emphasize our political education. That's what's lacking in this country. This is where the division that is really, if we keep it honest with ourselves, the schools that we were sent to were colonial schools. you know, it was designed by a colonial system to, what Michelle Alexander talks about implementing this new Jim Crow. It wants to keep white and black people together. They won't tell us about the Bacon Rebellion. You dig what I'm saying? When white and black people united in 1676 against this system and ransacked Jamestown, Virginia, they won't tell us about that. You know what I mean? That's a history that they want to keep hitting, just like the Rainbow Coalition, because that was the first Rainbow Coalition. It might not have been politically motivated like the first Rainbow Coalition, like with Hy Thurman and Fred Hampton and Jose Chacha Jimenez, but that was the start. After that rebellion was put down, that was the start of them implementing white supremacy, so we wouldn't be in this room talking today. You know, they didn't want black and brown and white and red and all of us to come together and recognize one thing in the Second Rainbow Coalition that you'll probably start hearing us talk about more. We don't look at ourselves no more like left and right. You know what I mean? A lot of people, when we say left and right, they think Democrat, Republican. Nah, we talk about the bottom and we coming for them motherfuckers at the top. We in the valley. You know what I'm saying? And we coming for them motherfuckers on that mountaintop. You know what I'm saying? We the wretched of the earth, like Franz Fanon talk about. And that plantation is global. It don't matter if you over in Africa, Asia, Europe, United States, South America. We all on the same oppressed global monopoly board of oppression. You know what I mean? And this is what the first Rainbow Coalition was trying to convey. The slaves might need to start understanding that we can't be going at each other. You know what I mean? Like Bobby Lee was saying, we paying taxes for them to whoop our ass. You know what I mean? What type of sense does that make? You know? But when we start to really build these type of coalitions, when we start to build this level of organization and class consciousness and collaboration, when different communities of different ethnic groups start to come together and we start having conversations, we start to recognize we got a lot more in common. We have a lot more in common. We have a lot more that we can build together. And one of the essence of, the message I try to convey is that, I've been in different demographics. I lived in the hood. I lived in the suburbs. I even had to move out to Warrensburg, Missouri at one point, and I lived in a rural area. And I really couldn't identify with. I took a little bit out of all those environments, but I didn't fully identify with all those environments. It was like something was missing. You know what I mean? Like we was all plugged in the matrix somehow. I couldn't explain it like that till the movie came out, but I was like, man, we plugged into the matrix. Like we don't even see what's going on. You know what I mean? But when we start to take that red pill of revolutionary consciousness, you know what I'm saying? And we start to look at the system and the material matrix that keeps us on this plantation enslaved, and it keeps us divided. And we start to realize, like, man, we really are our own solution. You know what I mean?
All power to the people.
All power to the people. That's the essence what every revolutionary in history was trying to convey to us. It was telling us either we could capitulate and we can hand our power over to the bourgeois representatives of the ruling class that's in power now, which is the capitalist imperialists. We can keep on doing that. We can keep on thinking about hope. We can believe in that Barack Obama and all these people was talking about, which is nothing but neo-colonialists, blackface pushing white supremacist, capitalist imperialist power. We know his policies. I'm talking to the choir in here. I'm pretty sure most people in here keep up on what's going on in the world. You know what I mean? We can keep on doing that, or we can allow them to keep on deceiving us like these fascists. You know what I mean? These fascists is playing on the oppression of white people. You know what I'm saying? But not connecting it to the class oppression that they're actually advocating them to sell us out. You know what I'm saying? But the more we have these conversations, the more that we start to build this type of level of consciousness, the more that elders and living legends like Hy Thurman talk about his experience. You know what I mean? We understand that the power has always lied in us. We just have to internalize it and bring about a collective consciousness. And that collective consciousness becomes a material force in itself. And like I said at the last book tour stop we did, imagine 500 years from now, our kids, our great grandkids and great grandkids and different generations ahead of us, they gonna look back and be like, man, what the fuck took y'all so long? You know what I mean?
That.
Real talk.
All power with you.
All power to the people. And we should look at ourselves as individuals of the future. You know what I mean? Because if we look at ourselves in that capacity, we can start making the society that we want to live in now by how we relate to each other, how we build these different what we call dual and contending power, where we institutionalize like the Black Panthers, like the Young Lords, the Young Patriots was doing back in the days. They took self-determination and made it a reality. They had the free breakfast program. They had the daycares. They had their own liberation schools. They had their own healthcare centers. You know what I'm saying? They even, I think Baltimore, Maryland even had an ambulance service. You know what I mean? They started to recognize we have to build institutions that's for the people, by the people, sustained by the people, and these institutions stand in contradictions to the institutions of the system. It's exposing the contradictions. It's a legitimate system. Our system that we're putting in place, the society that we're building right here within capitalism, this is the legitimate system that we need to put in place. This must come to state power. You know what I mean? That's what they were showing us. You know what I mean? And when we start to grasp that fully, we can liberate ourselves. We can liberate ourselves. And then we'll understand that we really write ourselves into history. And from there forth, we will always write our own pages of history. Imagine that, people. Us, we write in history together, collectively. Not letting these capitalists do it. Not letting these neo-colonialists do it no more. We need to start to recognize our real strength, and that's the power of our unity as a class. All power to the people.
All power to the people. So Kwame, I know that Chairman Shaka wants to make a statement at some point whenever you want.
Yeah, that's a good time.
All
So
right.
this the chairman from the new African Black Panther Party. They reside in North New Jersey. They're a part of the Second Rainbow Coalition amongst like 10 other groups. Just to name a few, why he gets them online. The White Panther, my comrade Rob, he's the Minister of Education with the White Panther Party. I already introduced our comrade Alyssa Ray. She's also one of the leaders of the New Era Young Lords. We just call them Young Lords now. You know.
Rob, here's Rob. He's be introduced.
I already did. I
Okay.
introduced him first. You got him on there?
Oh shit.
I thought they were turning the lights off because they were introducing you.
Just gonna put the spotlight on him.
Yes, sir. Hit the lights.
Well, where is he? He was just here.
Oh, perhaps. I tell y'all a funny story about him.
Yeah, go ahead while
Is
we're
he
waiting
on
for
there?
him.
Okay. I was telling them on the way up here, I was like, yeah, so our Chairman Shaka Zulu, sometimes he used all power to the people at the wrong time. He was taking me back to Newark, to the airport to fly back to Indianapolis. And he told me before we even got on the freeway, he was like, yeah, man, comrade, I always miss the exit to get off to the airport and stuff like that. So we like 2 minutes in, and I'm like, Shaka, you just missed the exit to the airport again. He was like, oh, power to the people.
Shaka, you there? Oh, yep, there he
All
is.
power to the people.
Let's miss his exit.
Where? Okay. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Kwame just, kind of introduced you, but, if you want to say a little bit about yourself and the organization, feel free.
Well, I want to see the people I'm talking to first of all.
Okay, yeah.
I can't even see anybody.
I don't think you'll be able to see anybody, but everybody can see you, though.
All power to the people. So first, my name is Shaka Zulu. All power to the people. There they go. All power to the people. That's what I wanted to see. That's what I'm talking about. So my name is Shaka Zulu. I'm chairman of the New African Black Panther Party. I'm centered here in the city of Newark. I'm a revolutionary. I became politicized while in the enemy prison. And we brought this organization the New African Black Panther Party and the United Panther Movement to the street as a spear to tear down this enemy system, which we thought and still believe is a millstone around the necks of the people. And so that's why we're here. That's why I'm a part of this wonderful and great movement. All power to the people.
All power to the people. Yeah, do you want to say anything about the Second Rainbow Coalition or about, the activism you're doing in Newark?
Well, first let me say I think, and Comrade Hy Thurman and Kwame talked a lot about it, and the movement certainly showed the intercommunalism that was necessary then and more now to bring people into political life, to highlight the contradictions of the enemy state versus the working class, to show the difference between the colonized around the world and those in imperial court. And so when revolutionary intercommunalism was first brought to the scene, it was kind of slapped aside, put on itself because of the various difficulties within the Black Panther Party at the time. And a lot of you comrades are familiar with that history, and the party split in 1971. But revolutionary intercommunalism is the recognition of all of our humanity. It's the recognition that we have the self-determination to determine our future independent of capitalism, imperialism, or any kind of nasty ism that holds the people back. And revolutionary intercommunalism is also applicable in all communities. I don't care if you're white and poor in Appalachia. I don't care if you're in the shanty of Latin America, wherever you at, if you're in Africa, if you are in Europe, Pantherism or revolutionary intercommunalism only means that you want to control the resources under the ground and the resources above the ground. And you want to make sure, like Karl Marx said, you distribute this stuff as equally as possible. We know we could never get to a perfect distribution of the resources around the world because they grow and develop unequally in different geographies. But when we capture that stuff, especially in independent countries, we need to use it on behalf, we need to use it as a trampoline to give the people in those countries a level of justice, a level of dignity, a level of responsibility for their own future. And so that's what I want to talk about. And if it's necessary, I want to tie in to the state of the world today. And I hope comrades there will ask me some questions. Because I could speak like Fidel Castro 6 hours, nonstop. Like,
You really can.
Yeah, we only have 5 hours and 59 minutes, though.
Oh, power to the people.
Anyone have any questions for Chairman Shaka Zulu?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, we got a question.
Yeah, so you said that you're based in Newark, New Jersey right now. Is there any other locations like around the northeast area, like New York or even like Connecticut, Rhode Island, anywhere over here?
All power to the people. Well, we do have an emerging cadre in Rhode Island. In fact, Rob Cordes is right there, and that's one of our best cadre out that way. But we're certainly developing United Panther movements in Black communities in the tri-state area first. That is our strategy. We think that in order to leverage national power from these oppressed and exploited communities, the face of resistance must be shown in the Black community. They must, first of all, develop a sense of inspiration, a sense of another world is possible, because the people there are hopeless. They are dejected. They have seen 1 million people come with a party line, and none of them address their conditions, either from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And so the people are dissatisfied. They're discontent. And when they don't listen to you or adhere to what you have to say, we shouldn't blame the people. We should re-examine our own ideas and our own practice so that we can deal with the 4 W's. Live with the people, fight with the people, struggle with the people, and if necessary, die with the people. All power to the people. So yes, we're based here in North New Jersey.
Any other questions? All right. Do you have a final word that you want to share before you part? We'll be sending you in New York City and comrades over there tomorrow, right?
We'll probably
Power
be
to
seeing like
people.
half
We're
of the
definitely
people in
in
the
New
Zoom
York
meeting
tomorrow
tomorrow.
night. We encourage everyone within listening voice to show up tomorrow at the People's Forum. We want to shake some things up. We want to show them there's a new power developing right beneath the surface. It's not the power of the Communist Party USA. It's not the power of Angela Davis standing with the puppet black flunky in Atlantic City trying to diffuse and weaken that movement. It's not the power of nonprofits. It's not the power of ambulance chasers like Al Sharpton and Attorney Crump. This is the power of the people. And when the people get together, things start rumbling right beneath the surface. And that's what the Second Rainbow Coalition is about. Making some rumblings within the anti-imperialist movement, within the so-called left movement, and most importantly, within the black movement. And I use that word broadly because we have a lot of tendencies bound up within the black movement. But we're trying to sharpen the contradictions, heighten the contradictions, and more importantly, we're trying to get the black community, the poor white community, the poor brown community to operate along the same lines. And the best way we could do that is to build base areas of social, cultural, and political power. Wherever we at, we could build that and we can leverage that, and we'll begin to make some inroads in terms of getting this fascist, imperialist enemy to recognize the demands of the people. All power to the people. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
All power to the people. All power. Thank you, comrades.
No doubt.
Well, it's always a pleasure to hear you speak, and like Kwame said, we will see you tomorrow.
No doubt. All power.
All power.
You can hit the lights, Alyssa. The lights. You good? Does anyone have any questions for me and Hy Thurman? From anything that we talked about today, to the film, to our books, to the Second Rainbow Coalition? Go ahead.
Something that came up in the movie and that Hy talked about was gentrification and how that has affected these movements over the years. And that's something I've seen a lot in the last 5 years, where it's like I've seen, sometimes it feels like a community is in place that is connected and starts forming some kind of revolutionary unity or togetherness, and then half the people have to move in the next 2 years because the rents go up. So I'd be curious to hear both your thoughts on, experience with that and how we can organize to fight back against it.
Well, some of that, I had explained about one of which was the People's Village that we tried to put together. That's an alternative. The other alternative is, and it's hard to fight people with a lot of money when you don't have a lot of money. And so you can push collectives, for instance. I know of people that have bought actually some buildings before they were torn down, and as a collective, there's a four flat unit in Chicago that houses families, in each of those, and each of those have gone. These families have gone together and bought, one of the apartments. So therefore, they turned it into a collective, and then they turned it into like a co-op, where they all take care of it. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to something. Could be my pacemaker. To get organizations that really do care about the people, and to get, backing for that. But my experience is that once the city or the state sets its sights on gentrification, it's pretty hard to stop it unless you're going to get together some cooperatives or collectives, and you'd probably still have to live in that environment where it is, but at least it took 50 years for them to get into Uptown. That's because he had so many different organizations fighting them that they finally won. You know, I mean, it's all gentrified. I used to pay $150 for an apartment. Since it's been gentrified there, it's $2,400. You know, so you know where it's going. It's the money. That's what it's all about, is the money, tax base and money. So unless you can get some politicians on your side, that's on the councils, you know, the city council or something like that to fight against it, it's hard. You know, to have legal services just other than just, you know, well, I won't even say it. Revolution. I will say revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key. When I think about gentrification, I think about that movie Hungry Games, the capital and then the districts. You know what I mean? That's really what they're doing. They're trying to move us to the edges, the peripheral, so the rich can take the center, you know, and get the stains out of view from people to see what's really that city looks like. You know what I mean? The real conditions of that city. You know what I mean? They want to make the downtown and the more urban environment close to downtown gentrified, but think about the ones that's leaving and going to the districts, the suburbs nowadays. And though they in the first generation or two, it might be still nice out there. But think about 2, 3 generations removed from when people was forced out. What those schools gonna look like? What those streets gonna look like? It's gonna look like the flip reverse. You know, and some in Indianapolis, some neighborhoods, man, you look like the streets look like Fallujah. You know, it looked like IEDs been going off everywhere. You know what I mean? But I think that's the key is building up, expanding this coalition type of building up the revolutionary intercommunalism, is institutionalizing revolution within the liberation schools, the daycare centers, the healthcare centers like the Panthers and the Young Lords and the Young Patriots was doing. This is how we start taking back our community. And when the people feel invested in their community, we can fight back a lot stronger because we had something to lose. You know what I mean? So I look at it as like we have to see the whole United States as a big grid, and we need to start taking as many of that grid to the people and to the community. We need to, like how I said, build these collectives, people that's starting farms. We need to hook that up with other farms throughout the country and stuff, and set up transportation network where we can start to not rely on their stores and jobs and institutions any longer for survival. We're building up our own self sufficiency. You know what I'm saying? That's one way they keep us in bondage is because we're too dependent. You know, we haven't built up our own food source, so they can cut us off there. And then we have to go crawling back. You know what I mean? But the more we become more self-sufficient, the more we'll be empowered as communities to fight back. Because now we start to see like, man, y'all the middleman anyway. And the fact of the matter, we ain't we ain't really y'all don't outnumber us really. We just out organized and out organized really when it comes down to it. We have to become more organized. The state is organized. The people gotta out organize the state. And we have the numbers to, you know, ratio wise, you know what I mean, to really defeat them. But that's why they keep us divided. They use their institutions to keep us divided. We need to use our institutions to bring us together.
Can I speak real quick?
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm Vivian, and I'm a community organizer here in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm a worker, I'm a revolutionary with a political organization called Counterpower. We're a Marxist communist political organization. Thank you guys so much for talking tonight.
Absolutely.
I'm not pushing that organization though right now. I'm pushing like the real work that we're doing. We're actually very inspired by the work that you were doing, Hy, back in the day. Like I read that book, Hillbilly Nationalist, that came out a decade ago. Yeah, and just I've read a lot of that history. So we're sort of doing like that type of community union type thing. So we have this organization that we've been building for. Like we've already been doing tenant renter organizing for the last 3 years. With the beginning of the pandemic, I had always been labor organizing with the industrial workers of the world, organizing like Starbucks workers and stuff like that when I was a kid. And then with the pandemic happening, I was like, what the fuck? What's going to happen is anyone going to even be able to pay the rent? Everyone's getting laid off, or essential workers getting shorter hours, whatever. So we had formed like a network of tenants, but eventually we realized like, well, all the different issues are connected, work issues, renting issues, etc. So we have an organization that we call the Providence Organization of Workers and Renters Power. And,
all power to the people.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to leave some pamphlets up at the end over there, but, we're trying to fight the gentrification in the neighborhoods. We're also trying to build a united front. So, we're working with the principled folks who are within the more reformist social democrat type organizations. We're working with some of the, historically like black nonprofits and stuff like that to get rent stabilization, fight gentrification and stuff like that. But on a principled basis, offering our critiques when we have them, hearing back things that, we need critiques from too, criticism, self-criticism. But I just wanted to share that because you brought that up, and we definitely believe in building cooperative structures for housing, and that really what we need the state to do is invest in that. Give homes to the people, let the people manage them themselves, control them themselves. But I just wanted to sort of bring that up because I figured
we need to connect.
Make the connect exactly because I don't know how many folks are from Rhode Island or not here. But we definitely want to talk to anyone who believes in that type of work, building principled unity together, to do working class organizing, especially like in places. I'm doing another campaign with these more social democratic people, but it's across in the suburbs in Rhode Island and Woonsocket. A lot of poor people moving from the city back to Woonsocket. Woonsocket's where, huge, drug crisis, huge eviction crisis there. Homeless, exactly. Because of the evictions, and it's all slums, all investors building up these homes, and buying out these homes, and then not fixing it, the conditions, absentee landlords and stuff like that. Also in West Warwick, we're finding this landlord across the entire state right now that's got over 250 units across the entire state, all dispersed out in like all these suburbs. Only got like 3 in Providence, but and those are the types of things that we're seeing where people are having to move out. There's already been gentrification in Providence for like last 30 years, or more. And so people are moving out to these areas that are more disinvested and stuff like that. And it's like the only way that we're like, we're struggling with people that are like, like they call themselves deplorables, or they see themselves as, they watch Fox News or Trump, but like they hate their landlord, and they're like,
all power to the people,
and they're like, for snowflakes, you guys aren't that bad. So, it's the only way that we're going to be able to, like, motherfuckers who've, like, come back at this place a few times and stuff like that, all these, white supremacists, Nazis, etc. I'm that faggot that they originally wanted to say. They wrote comic faggots or whatever. I'm a trans woman. That's like their potential base. And unless we start organizing as, like, the city left or whatever, within those areas, we're not going to be able to fight that. The fascist right wing is going to be able to encircle city areas, from the periphery and wage their like white supremacist protracted people's war against us. So we can't deal with that shit. And so I just encourage everyone to talk to me, talk to my comrade Ralph afterwards. He's also in Counter Power. He struggled back in the days too. I'm sure everyone will get to talk a little bit more. But
is your contact information on the
the contact information is right there. It's just an email address right there at the bottom. Anyone can reach out. And I just, because you brought up the thing about gentrification, I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
Thank you. That's what this unity tour is about. It's exactly what you're talking about. Is let's bring people together. Let's get people talking to each other, and working together.
And bring more organizations into the coalition.
Rob's in the area.
Yeah,
so
I live like 20 minutes away.
We're going to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess I have a question. for all the comrades that are here, because there's a few things that are just not mentioned on this unity statement for the second coalition, and so it doesn't have to be answered now, but I'd like to know because I am part of a national organization. We've got groups in Providence, New York City, upstate New York, and Albany, Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, other places. A lot of us came out of the new SDS movement back in 2006. One of our founders of our organization was actually the founder of the new SDS with another guy when they were like 16 and stuff like that. But so the main question is just there's the 6 disciplinary rules to uphold some common professional discipline probably within your United Front Coalition. Would be very curious to learn about those rules, any of the types of information about what you're looking for in in building that, because we do believe in our organization about building a principled revolutionary united front. And then the other thing is just like it says all members of the coalition, but there's not a list of who's in the coalition, so just curious.
Yeah, we actually had a different copy of that had them written on it, but that's not the one that we have with us today.
I don't know. Our organization has a book somewhere in here, I think. But we definitely believe in intercommunalism and building those ties. So
the organizations: New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, which is a coalition of Brown Berets. Fury, which stands for Feminist Uprising to Resist Inequality and Exploitation. NASO, which Hy heads, North Alabama. It stands for North Alabama School for Organizers. New Era Young Lords, Guardian Rebellion, and American Indian Movement Northeast Woodland Chapter. Those are all the coalition members as it exists now. We're probably about to bring in a few more. The 6 rules, 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. We put that. Let me see. We formulated that, and that became official August 21st, 2021. But we actually formulated as the Statement of Unity says. We actually refounded this May 14, 2021. This was out in Newark, New Jersey. Again, it was the White Panthers, New African Black Panther Party, and the New Era Young Lords was the first 3 founding members. Pretty much kind of like with the same inspiration with the Young Patriots, the Young Lords, and the Black Panther Party. You know what I mean? After we watched this film, that was the inspiration. After all the years I spent in prison, I still didn't know about the First Rainbow Coalition. That's how much that's hidden from us. But we want to broadcast that now because I think this is the model of class struggle that is needed to unite our class. It's not ideologically, politically driven, but most of us is socialists and communists. I'm a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, that via revolutionary intercommunalism, you know what I mean? But we base it on the upholding the original Black Panther Party's 10-point program, the Young Lords, the Young Patriots 11-point program, the Young Lords organization 13-point program. You know what I mean?
The Poor People's Army 16-point program.
16-point program with the Poor People's Army today. So this is something we actually talked about today. When I got out of prison 7 years ago, I saw like and I'm using the left in this context, the radical left. It was a lot of disunity out here. You know what I mean? Everybody talks about the United Front under the leadership of the dictatorship of the proletariat. You know what I mean? Or some form of that United Front. But if we all have ideological and political litmus tests that we can find one thing to divide us, Like, how are we gonna ever? The fascists, even with they ridiculous ideology, and we know that stuff is ridiculous. The stuff they uphold, you know, they want to ban all books. They want to stay ignorant. You know what I mean? But they can still find common points of unity. You have the Confederate neo-Nazis uniting with the Christo-fascists. You know what I'm saying? All of these individuals recognize they have a common purpose. We have a bigger purpose. We trying to stop what Fred Hampton said. If we don't stop fascism, fascism gonna stop us all. You know what I mean? We all recognize after Donald Trump, like there's no hiding what this country is going towards. They've abandoned abandoned abortions. Like, who would have thought that was gonna happen? We knew that they was doing, like, working towards that. But just think about all the other stuff that's been rolled back. They don't even teach Black history down in Florida no more. Like, that's banned. They attacking the LGBTQ I community down there. You know what I'm saying? That's becoming criminalized and demonized and stuff. Down in Texas, you can't say slavery in the books no more. It's involuntary relocation. What the fuck is that? You know what I mean? So, like, we living in an existential threat right now, and we have to start to recognize this as oppressed people. That only way we're gonna protect ourselves is we have to come together, and we have to look at ourselves as the solution to all these problems that we're facing today. You know what I mean?
To just piggyback on that a little bit, in New Jersey, Sherry Honkala was talking about how we need to stop thinking of revolution as some far off thing because people are fucking dying now.
Oh my God, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I just didn't remember where I heard it.
It was Sherry. It's always Sherry.
That was really perfect. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. You was making a statement?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to point out that and to reiterate what you said earlier, and she also said that day, we need to stop talking about the left versus right and frame it more as we're from the bottom coming for those motherfuckers on top.
The valley, as Fred Hampton said. We in the valley. We coming for the motherfuckers at the on that mountaintop. And I agree. I think we just have to understand revolution is a protracted struggle. You know, I always say, you know, use like Mao and them, like in 1921, right? When they founded that, 1921, the Chinese Communist Party. It took them a couple of decades to come to power, 1949. And in my opinion, I feel like they were up against lesser odds than us. You know what I'm saying? Well, greater odds. My fault. Greater odds, like peasants, people at different times couldn't even read and write. They was, you know, famished conditions. You know what I mean? Like ragtag type of situation. But they was able to unite the people. They was able to educate the people. They was able to build political consciousness in the people and unite them and come to power, achieve state power. I feel like we in a better situation. Like we got YouTube, you know, like, you know, even if a person can't read and write, like they can watch a documentary on the First Rainbow Coalition and be like, damn, you know, I can relate to that. You know, things about the Black Panther Party, different documentaries. We have so many different resources towards us. But we also have a lot of those things that is double-edged because they're also the same thing that keeps us distracted. You know what I mean? Because and we have so much false information out here that keeps us fighting boogeymans that's not even there. What's the QAnon stuff that the right is pushing? Like it's a whole lot of the Illuminati is gonna get us. You know what I mean? Nah, it's a class. It's a class oppressor. You know what I mean? Like we have to put a real circle around it and be scientific. You know what I mean? But that's the responsibilities of revolutionaries to educate the people, work through those contradictions. But we can't do it in the dogmatic way, people. We gotta relate to the people. We can't forget where we came from. And what Fred Hampton was very good at, he was able to be humble and able to be approachable to relate to the people where they at. We're not gonna get to the people talking about proletarian and dictatorship of the proletariat, dialectical material. That's not how we start the conversation. It's building a relationship. That's how we start the conversation. We build a relationship. We find out how we can unite around common conditions. If it's around abortion rights for women, We can unite with the people on that. If it's around police brutality and terror, we can unite with the people around that. Homelessness, unite with the people around that. And in time, they will start to understand what we're trying to fight towards. And when we institutionalize, like the Black Panther Party have these different programs in the community, and we the people become a part of that, this is also an educational process. You know what I'm saying? We have to get beyond the abstract and look at the concrete. This is about being dialectical as well. You know what I'm saying? When we do that, then we connecting to people on the basic level of where we reach them, where they at now. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that the revolutionaries got to become better at doing, so we don't put people off. We need to win these people over. You know what I mean? And that's how we do it. We don't do it by shooting over their head with abstract stuff that they like. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, who is Karl Marx? You know what I mean? Like, does he live around the corner from us?
I had somebody that thought he was one of the Marx brothers.
You feel me?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the people can relate to us when we talk about Huey. When we talk about Fred, that's a closer history that people can relate to. Jose Chacha Jimenez. We got one senator right here, Hy Thurman, living legend, co-founder of the Young Patriots. You know what I mean? But this is how we, connect with people in a way where we don't shoot too far above them. You know what I'm saying? But we have to keep that in mind. We can't keep on doing that, you know what I mean? Or we not going to win the people over to this revolution.
But it all comes back to what?
Political education.
Yeah.
If people want to learn, they should, we should help them learn.
Yeah, yes. And it's not to, and one thing, it's not to say that we shouldn't fight for theory. You know what I'm saying? But it's not to put the cart before the horse and understand the revolutionary process. If we dialectical materialists, if we're going to have a real scientific analysis of how we develop revolution, we got to remember what Huey said. It's not an event, it's not an action, it's a process. Respect the process. And the first thing is being able to build them relationships. That's the starting point. You know what I mean?
You gotta meet people where they're at.
Right
the
there.
Mass line.
Mass line, bam.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Any other questions or statements or anything? Well,
if
don't be shy.
If you're wondering who's outside, that's the John Brown Gun Club.
Yeah, so we all protected. We was waiting on the fascists. Come over here and throw another brick over here, fascists. You'll see all the power of the people. You hear me?
Intercommunal ass whoopings.
You do have to appreciate their eloquence.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We gotta get some group shots with the brick. Too,
right?
We
getting that before we leave. It was like we came to the fascist territory and they didn't want to throw no bricks over here. But I appreciate everyone coming out. This was a very wholesome discussion, dialogue. Got to meet Chairman Shaka Zulu, our chairwoman for the Second Rainbow Coalition, White Panther Comrade Elder and stuff. And I really appreciate the comments and also the questions that y'all have. I really already see, I feel like I'm speaking to the choir, that y'all already family, y'all already comrades. But just this community, Rob right here, he's with the White Panther movement. He's a part of the Second Rainbow Coalition. He's more than willing to unite with anybody
that's got revolution on their mind.
Anybody has revolution on their mind. So definitely get with him. And like I said, we got our books that we're selling and stuff. It helps us, be able to do this type of stuff. I took off a whole week. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I ain't gonna get paid, but this helps sustain me and stuff. So definitely support. And thank you.
Is there